Now, the leader of Britain's police chiefs organisation has called UK policing institutionally racist.
Gavin Stevens, who chairs the representative body for chief constables, has become the most senior serving leader to say discrimination in policing operates at a fundamental level, calling on leadership to address the issue. Stevens' comments come after the head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, refused to accept the conclusion of a report by Baroness Casey that called the Met institutionally racist and misogynistic.
Well, joining us now is former Met Police detective Mike Neville. We keep hearing accusations like this, and, you know, I always think when every time you hear someone shout racist, that if there's actual evidence, fine, that is despicable. But when there's not, and it's a word like institutional, this ends up being very unhelpful for people who need to get on with their jobs.
It is absolutely unhelpful. It's unhelpful for every officer who's on the beat today, driving around trying to solve burglaries, robberies, rapes and everything else. And what gets me with things like the Casey report, they always focus on one side. So it's disingenuous when they quote, oh, the police are 7 times more likely to search black people than white people, and this sort of... But they don't ever bring in the crime stats. For example, we know that 60% of knife murders in London are committed by 2% of the population, that is, young black men. So that's 30 times what it should be. And if the police were that racist, they'd be searching elderly black ladies, but obviously they're not, because elderly black ladies don't commit crime. And these things are just so bad for the officers on the street. And what you find with the left is they'll condemn anybody for stereotyping, and yet they'll call a whole body of... all the police are racist with this institutional racism thing. And it's just not good. And I think Mark Rowley is being very strong in saying that he's not going to go with this because he knows it's unhelpful.
And, of course, this is a sort of response to the Stephen Lawrence case all those years ago, 30 years ago, where there was that sort of contention that the police... That's where the phrase first started, institutionally racist. There may have been some cause for that then. What Gavin Stevens is saying, the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, is that in 30 years we haven't done enough to sort this out. But what worries me, and now maybe he's right, but what worries me about this is I just think there's a suspicion that Mr Stevens is another one of these woke coppers who wants to climb aboard the right-on wagon and, you know, say, oh, look at me, I'm wonderful and we're all racists. I mean, do you think it's that, or is there anything in what he's saying?
I think it is absolutely that. And one of the things is that he's been voted in as the leader of the National Police Chiefs Council. This is a man who's, when he was in charge of Surrey Police, had the lowest burglary detection rate in the country. And you can see the focus.
That's saying something.
You can see the focus here of these people who vote them in. So most people, black or white, gay or straight, male or female, what they're interested in, if their house gets burgled today, that the police come and do a good job, they look after them and they try and find the burglar and they try and get their goods back. But what they see is this almost like a Westminster bubble in police form, that people are fussing about this institutional racism, where the general public just want the police to get on and do a good job and catch thieves, robbers, burglars and whatever else.
Yeah.
It's a problem in using terms like institutional racism, this idea that it doesn't really mean anything other than there's no evidence necessarily that we're going to give you, we're just going to tell you this as a matter of fact. I mean, you've had a long career on the police force. Did you ever see anything that in your mind was overtly racist?
No, I didn't. I saw the police just do their job, and the police can't help who commits crime. It's not their fault that yachts of young black men kill a lot of other young black men. The police just have to clear up the mess. And it's no good just shouting these things like racism and institutionalised racism. It's almost like some kind of Soviet Union-type crime that you can force onto a whole group. It isn't fair at all to do that. The police have a dirty, horrible job. If there are police officers who are racist or wicked in any other way, then they need to be rooted out and thrown out. And every organisation has some bad people in it, and they need to go. But the vast majority of officers who are out on the street at the moment will risk their life if somebody pulls a knife, a gun or whatever else, and we should be supporting them, not condemning them with these vague accusations from some academic.
And operationally, if you can go back to your days when you were on the streets as an officer, this kind of comment doesn't help, does it? I remember, I think it was back in 2014 or something, when she was Home Secretary, you know, Theresa May never saw a woke bandwagon she didn't want to jump onto. She colluded with the police to say, right, we've got to stop all this stop and search because it's not fair against people of colour. And it was kind of cut back to the point of nothing. And, of course, knife crime and crime generally absolutely rocketed. So when you've got police chiefs now bandying this racism term around about coppers, it's going to stand in the way of stop and search, and we need stop and search.
Exactly. Imagine you're a young... Kevin, imagine you're a young PC on the beat right now. You see a young black lad and you think you've got good reason to think he's got a knife. If you search him, you're bringing a whole world of potential woe to your door. You can be criticised. If you don't search him, no one's going to say, oh, you should have done that. And then, so what that does, though, is that leaves doubt in the officer's mind. They don't do the search, and let's say that suspect goes on to stab and kill somebody. The people who lose out the most through not stopping and searching are young black men who are more likely to be the victims of murder than anyone else.
Now, these comments have come from a very senior person, the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council. That's an extremely privileged position to be in. He's made them publicly and they've been making headlines. Is that going to worsen the situation of preventing, say, young black men or young Asian men or women from wanting to join the police force, or also give motivation for people from those communities to say, we don't trust the police?
Well, I think a lot of young people, whether they're black, white, Asian, whatever, don't really read the press or look at the media, so they're not influenced by it at all. And I remember running a cadet unit in inner London at the time of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, and a young black guy came up to me and said, sir, what about this, what about the police? And I thought he was going to come out with something about racism. I said, no, I want to join. You know, so it's completely different. You know, these young people are away from that. You know, the police have gone out of the way to recruit people from different groups. But to be honest with that, I've never known one person say to me, I didn't like the colour, sex or sexuality of the officer who came to help me. What they complain about is I didn't get a good service. And at the time when crime is at the detection rate is at the lowest level, that things like shoplifting, burglary, robbery, knife crime are seemingly spiralling out of control, surely the head of the National Police Chief Constables Committee has got a better thing to deal with than institutionalised racism. What about institutionalised failure? What about dealing with that?
Yes, and, you know, what worries me about his statement, so he's going to droning on about we have to redesign the policies, the practices, the implementation of policing to remove that discrimination. In this speech, he doesn't come out with any evidence at all that the police are institutionally racism. He just uses that handy cliche. That's not acceptable, really, from a man in this position.
I just think, as we've said, it lets every young officer down, and it tells the public that the people in charge of the police are out of touch and they're not dealing with their concerns. People just want to feel safe in their home, they want to feel safe when they're out and about, and they want all their family to be safe too. That's what they want, and it's not being delivered.
I agree, and you know, I mean, every organisation in all walks of life, there are racists. And we are on TalkTV sort of quite vociferous sometimes, speaking out against our police. But what I think we're saying here is we're not buying this, Gavin. We're not buying that all police are institutionally racist. I don't think it's fair to officers, do you?
It's not at all. And what are these policies? Let's see the policy. What is the policy that's racist? Produce it. Let's have some evidence. Because when you look at stop and search, it says nothing in there about racism. It's about reasonable ground to suspect that somebody's carrying a knife or stolen property or drugs. There's nothing racist in that.
Mike Neville, former Met Police detective, thank you so much.
Thank
Always
you,
a pleasure.
Mike.